Well, I decided to bring this thing inside the house. I cleaned it up, disassembled the panels. This is one of the Robinair refrigerant recovery machines. Now, obviously, when I powered it up, it did not turn on. So, the display basically remained blank. So I knew there was something wrong with the circuit board or some other reason. So I went ahead and I disassembled the unit, and it's basically stacked circuit boards. You've got this display unit over here, which also has the logic board. And then we have the main board with the relays that control the outputs, and then they have the I/O for the sensors and all that. So power comes in here, and then it's fed to the logic board. Now, of course, the logic board doesn't do anything, it won't work. Well, I think I found the problem. Right over here, there's actually a landing point on this board, if I can find it. I did see it earlier. Here it is. And you'll notice that right here, this had come loose. Now what we have here, we have some contact pads on the board, and then it has this connector. And it basically just sits on here, and it makes a connection. So this connects to the other board. Now the problem is, once these copper pads have come off, it's very difficult to try to rebond it. So what I'm going to do is something I used to do years ago. I used to teach people how to do this when I was teaching courses at the college. I'm going to locate this spot over here. I'm going to give it a little bit of a cleaning. This pad over here is still bonded to the board, but these are missing. So I'm going to have to actually recreate these track pads out of copper, out of sheet copper, and I will use cyanoacrylate or super glue to glue it down. Then I have to make sure that these traces connect to those pads, that they're soldered on. And last but not least, I will surface solder this together. Now it is kind of strange. I don't think I've ever seen such heavy-duty connectors attached with nothing but surface pads. And you'll notice here where you have multiple pads, there's a lot more force. But over here, this one, you only got 4 of them, and evidently it broke. Now I have another one of these units, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to take that one apart, and if it has the same exact problem, then I know there's a flaw. Now, you might wonder, why in the world would you want a refrigerant recovery machine? I mean, if you've seen my old videos, which probably a lot of people haven't, you know that I built a refrigerant recovery machine out of a portable air conditioner, and it works relatively well. But there is one little thing that people don't realize. In order to use the old refrigerant recovery technology, I have to constantly monitor it. So I have my vacuum pump hooked up, and then from there, I have to evacuate the system. Then I have to make sure that I've also purged the lines. Then I have to have the other system, which is made out of an old, well, as I said, the old portable AC unit, which does the actual refrigerant recovery. And then I have to have a way of weighing the refrigerant, and then I have to measure how much oil came out of the system and all that. Well, this unit does it already. It has an internal tank, and it has a scale built in the bottom. It has solenoids that control all the functions. Here's the vacuum pump, and it's there. You can see it actually has a little tail sticking out where you can fill it with oil, and you can check the oil level right here. And it has gauges built in, so I don't have to have gauges hanging on the vehicle. So it is kind of nice. Now this unit, I wasn't sure exactly when it was made. So I started to look at the circuit boards, and I actually found on this ribbon cable that goes to the display, it shows right here a date. Tested, and that's the date, as you can see, 1/6/10. Now I don't know if this was replaced because it had failed, but since this unit is pretty old, I figure that's when it was made. So we're talking about a unit from 2010. That's what, 14 years ago? So it's not that old. I mean, it's old, but it's not that old. And I looked up the design, and these units were being made in the late 1990s. That's when they first came out with the advertisements. So again, it's probably a waste of time to most people, but to me, it's kind of nice. It also has this little tube here where you can screw in your refrigerant oil, and the system will charge for you. So it has a lot of functions. Now, hopefully, The only thing wrong with this logic board is that connector, because even though this unit was sitting outside, there doesn't seem to be any corrosion on any of these integrated circuits. So I have a pretty good feeling. It looks like it's got that coating. Now the display may not be great. You'll notice that it's a bit faded. It's probably been sitting in the sun. And you can see these LCD displays, the polarizer gets damaged. But believe it or not, I've been able to fix that. You can actually buy polarizer film, take this thing apart, and fix it. So maybe, I don't know, but we'll see. But anyway, you know, for basically scrap value, which was 50 bucks for 3 of these units, I think it's worth the risk. Now, if I do fix it, that means that I now have a unit which is probably worth a couple $1,000s or more if you bought a new one. This thing used has got to be worth maybe $300 or $400. And I can use it for all the jobs that I do. And if you think about it, when you want to get the air conditioning fixed in your vehicle, in your equipment, or anything that's mobile, even some of the home appliances like water coolers and refrigerators and stuff like that that use a 134 charge, you can use it with this unit. Now, when they were originally made, they were also used for R12, but I don't think there's too much R12 out there. And even though you're not supposed to do it, I've actually taken refrigerant recovery units, cleaned them out and redid it and used them for R22, which is another thing that's good to recover. Now again, why do I recover refrigerant? Because on my own equipment, which is very old, it gives me a source when I need to do a repair. Now, my current air conditioner that I'm using, this thing, that uses 410. That's a higher pressure, and I don't have a unit for that yet. Although most of the time when the unit is working, you can kind of let it pressurize itself. If I ever have to take the unit out to clean it, that's what I'll do. I'll run it, and then I'll close one valve, then the other valve, and then turn the system off. And you don't really lose anything because it can basically pull a vacuum. But in this case, it'll be kind of nice. And again, I mean, there's not that much rust inside, so I don't think it's sat outdoors very long. Otherwise, this whole thing would have been just one disaster. But then again, with the plastic cover it had, I think that helped keep the rain out of it. And this tank, I mean, there is a little bit of rust, but I'm going to go ahead and double check and make sure that it's nothing bad. I'll go ahead and just put some OSPHO or some, phosphoric acid, and then go ahead and touch it up with paint. I think it'll be okay. So anyway, not a bad setup. And if it works, it'll be beneficial. But if it doesn't, I'll have some little parts I can play with. I got some neat little solenoids in there, and this little aluminum manifold, the vacuum pump. There's also the compressor and the filter assembly. So there's a lot of good parts that I can use, but I have a really good feeling I can get at least one of these working. And if I could get 2 working, that'd be fantastic. I could use one for one refrigerant and one for the other. Remember, if you ever buy or use these type of units, you should never ever mix refrigerants. I mean, first of all, you create a product that's useless and you'll have to dump it somewhere. And second of all, you're going to contaminate your unit. So whatever you set the unit up for, make sure you only use it for that refrigerant. And I think 134 is a great one because you can still get it for now. And that way, if you have older vehicles, you can use that. I still have one system for R12, which I still have, and I still have a little R12. I keep that for my old Chargers and stuff to keep them 100% original. But even if you have older cars, you can adapt them to 134. So anyway, that's my little thing for today. Thankfully, I don't have to work today. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get this done, and I guess I'll keep you up with what's going on.